the trials and tribulations of being Leafs fans. And this week, the Leafs had a 3-game set against the Ottawa Senators Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they get 5 out of 6 points, which is excellent, especially against any professional hockey team. But it seems like fans are never satisfied, and naturally, you're not going to be satisfied when something occurs like what happened on Monday. And Max, I'll let you break it down for us to begin with.
Yeah, I'm struggling to believe at the moment. Game one on Monday, it seemed like everything was clicking for us exactly how we wanted to. Thornton's return to play was huge with a beautiful assist to kick it off. Austin Matthews, his play of the game was an assist for me with a beautiful keep in at the blue line and throw it out to Thornton for a goal, giving Thornton a 2-point night. They got a 5-on-3 opportunity, which was kind of huge because the power play had been struggling recently. And when you put Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Riley out, all 5 of the big boys on a 5-on-3, just too good. Like a goal was guaranteed, even though they only had 30 seconds and muffed the first break-in play. So firing on all cylinders, everything seemed fine. And then, man, I'm still not quite sure what happened. Shorty giveaway by Tavares in our own zone gives them the 5-2 lead with 9 seconds left. Then Thornton with dwindling seconds on our own power play, the same power play they got the shorty on, kind of tries to force it and feed it into the middle, which just when you've got a few seconds left on your power play and sending it into a zone with 3 of the opponents, probably not the smartest thing to do. And who knew that Zub had such sick hands on the breakaway. 5-3. I don't even remember the 4th goal, really. I must have blacked that one out. And then it's just trauma and triggers back to that game we're not talking about. But when there's that much of a comeback in the air, the extra man goal just seems inevitable. And I mean, sick hands by Dadonov, the bane of Johnny Superbman. If anyone can remember YouTube series going all the way back to 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I'd pick the Leafs in 3-on-3 hockey against any team other than a motivated Connor McDavid. But Morgan Riley just making a poor decision on the 3-on-3, trying to force a shot through instead of setting up Austin Matthews, and shot block and the finish from Dadonov.
Yeah.
Thing was, it was such a thread the needle performance because honestly, if you were to look at just pure scoring chances, I would say the Leafs outplayed the Suns in the 3rd period, but they were just flawless on their execution. Freddie probably could have had 1 or 2 of those. 0 for 2 on the breakaway isn't quite the look you're hoping for. There were a couple opportunities we had to finish and put it back more out of reach and couldn't quite finish, but just the Leafs, still the Leafs. I think Morgan Riley is the only player left from that game we're not talking about, but the collapse, it goes beyond players, just a cursed franchise.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster of emotions, right? We're both, you can see we have kind of a shared notes document, and typing out just us absolutely fawning over the great talent of the skaters we have. And then you see the turnaround of emotions as you move further down the notes section, and the pain that you go through as a team gives up yet another lead. Freddie had a tough one. He bounced back. Austin with the Kablama one-timer in the second game, which was pretty much from the spot he would have scored if Morgan had dished him the putt. So a little bit of more pain there for us to dwell on. And yeah, that first game, just so much sadness. Like my housemates who are not hockey fans were just like, "Oh, how about that Leafs 5-1, eh?" Just
Yeah, you're
they just
Your
dig the
Ottawa Sens girlfriend must have had
yeah,
a pretty fun Tuesday.
she's a bit of a casual Senators fan, but
Okay.
she was just she asked me, why is like daddy lighting up my timeline? Because the Sens fans, they love Dadonov. They're obsessed with him. And uh yeah, it was definitely a painful one to say the least, but the Leafs come back and give solid efforts in the second and third game. A couple bad moments, but overall dominated most of those six periods, especially game three, which was there was just some filthy highlights in that game. I I almost puked when Marner scored that goal where he undressed Mike Riley and shelved it with about an inch of space to fit that puck in. An amazing like backhand pass had Matt Murray on the opposite post and Matthews just tucks it in. Um, there just some very nasty play, and there was at one point in the third period there was a 2 minute stretch where each one of the four lines got out there and had sustained possession in the Senators zone. Like they were just all buzzing at one point, and of course as soon as 4 days later you get those triggering flashbacks as the score's 5-1, the Sens make it 5-2. But we get some contribution from William Nylander, some contribution from Jonathan Tavares, who've been getting some flack on Twitter this week for a recent downswing in play, but they kind of get the monkey off their back there, and especially Nylander with that Steve Simmons article. I don't know if you saw that in the Toronto Sun, the
I heard of
some
it.
assembly required. I just the thing with Nylander is like you either love him or you hate him. And that's you can say that about a lot of players. My dad, of course, calls him a hair skater very frequently, and a lot of people question it's tough when you see him do those flybys where he just throws the stick in and then turns around and completely goes the other way from where the puck's going. He refuses to use his body at all, but at the same time, he's still an incredibly productive player for his position and makes an average amount of money for his position and for what his role is. And so at some point, you just got to accept that that's what you're going to get from Nylander, and you have to compensate for his weaknesses by getting a guy like Wayne Simmons, or I don't know, getting another guy who's going to dish it out a little bit more, so that they balance each other out. And I think Wayne Simmons, of course, his injury affects that second light line significantly because they no longer have that grit guy, and Hyman being out last night as well. But yeah, at some point, Nylander's not going to be the guy who's going to give you hits or really fight for that puck the same way that a Hyman will, or even like an Austin. Austin Matthews has been unbelievable at taking the puck away from people this season. It's fantastic to watch. Uh, so happy for Nylander that he got the bang in to make it a 6-2 at that point.
Yeah, I've been less frustrated with the second line than I think most of Leafs Nation, honestly, just because I feel so bad for them. They've gone through 7 or 8 players in that third position. Like, remember when the season started, it was Jimmy Vesey. Then they tried out Mikheyev for a hot second. It looked like Simmons was settling in, and then he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. So is it Hyman? They went with Kerfoot last night, which I thought was interesting because I really like Kerfoot as the third line center and don't think there's anyone on the roster who can fit that role better than him. But I did like what I saw from Kerfoot. I mean, ultimately, you want to get back to Simmons on that second line and then go for that third line checking that I love and can't talk about enough of the potential for. So I thought the second game in the series was probably overall a better night for that second line, just in terms of scoring chances generated, even though they didn't put up any points, and Tavares and Nylander both putting up points in this one. Yeah, I thought it was pretty curious and interesting and indicative of the mind of Sheldon Keefe that he decided to swap out Nylander and Marner in the last 10 minutes of the game and kind of decrease the odds of the Matthews hat trick in order to try and get Tavares going and get him a goal. And I mean, paid off in spades with Marner having a direct assist on the Tavares goal. And I mean, not a very wrist shot that's not screened from the blue line, a pretty low percentage scoring opportunity, but Tavares just kind of force of will putting it in, and he didn't even look relieved. And
Yeah, if you're a Sens fan, I saw that a couple of them were upset with the performance of Matt Murray. He came in and replaced an injured Hoberg, and uh, is a guy who's still struggling to find himself. The Sens gave him a big contract, and it's tough to see him underperforming. But if you're a Sens fan, you can't be complaining too much that you're losing games because you weren't expected to do well, and so you hoping to get that top pick in the draft so that you can continue to build this franchise up. And so if Matt Murray has a down year, but he's doing things the right way and working on the process, then you hope he can turn things around. It doesn't have to be this season. You'd like to see some progress, but it's not the worst thing in the world if he's playing poorly, because you're not expected to be winning games. And so it's not the end of the world for them.
yeah, I thought he played all right. I mean, pretty tough to come in
Mm.
and just on a night you think you have off, especially when you're basically still returning from injury. Then in like late second, a lot of the third period, I thought he had a couple steals that like we could have been looking at an 8-9 goal game if he didn't elevate. But yeah, that last goal, you kind of got to have. Speaking of which, Hutchinson with, other than the Stutzla goal, not too much to complain about.
Yeah. He ended up having 37 shots against, which
Yeah,
is a ton, but I think Ottawa was really throwing a lot of stuff on net in that last period. I think they had 16 shots in that third period. And
which is
uh
what you want to do when the goalie's making his return to the NHL and hasn't played in like I think a year. I mean, that's if I'm the DJ Smith, that's exactly what I'm telling the Sens to do. Like just throw everything at the net. You don't know what this guy's gonna give up. But yeah, I think the numbers were a bit padded.
and the offense did enough, right? An early goal for Matthews allows him to settle in a little bit and play with the lead and just be himself, not trying to force too much. And having a big lead, especially, means he doesn't have to, like, I don't know, do anything crazy. He can stay in his net, stay composed, and he gave him enough. And he did it last year too, when he was a backup briefly. He came in and won a couple. Obviously, had some poor performances, but with Campbell out, that's as much as you could have expected from your backup goalie. Gives him a chance to win, and maybe lets in a poor one. But when you score 7, it's not too big of a deal. And so, yeah, all in all, after a very tumultuous week, we still pull out 5 out of 6 points, sit 8 points ahead of the Montreal Canadiens for first in the North Division, going into a, another really right back in Montreal on Saturday for another great matchup. And so this North Division is the gift that keeps on giving. Just really excited to watch that one when it comes up.
Yeah, a
I
true series of there and back again. They started off playing so well and then kind of collapsed, had to rebuild in the second game, go back to the defensive fundamentals, and then they got back to the Leafs that everyone's hoping to see, and this time closed out the third period. So if it was any other team, any other franchise, I'd be right peddling the stuff I usually do about building back better. You want to weather the adversity early so that you pay now, so you don't have to pay later. I'm not so certain that this franchise isn't cursed and that we're not still going to have a first round exit, no matter how well we play at times in the regular season. So
Time will tell. The last thing I talk about for this week for the Leafs is they do acquire Alex Galchenyuk. And before he ended up traveling to the States to Carolina, dude's been passed around a lot recently. I think we talked about him on Monday,
yeah,
right before the trade news came through. So, um, yeah, it was kind of bad timing on that move, but they get a guy where you take a flyer on him. There's no rush to get him in the lineup yet with the amount of guys we have in those kind of bottom six, and really loved what we've been getting from Travis Boyd, and Pierre Engvall's actually not looked like terrible like he did the last time we saw him playing. And obviously you've got Robertson on the injury reserve who will come back eventually, and Spets has been playing well, and Patan. So uh, yeah, give him time, let him settle into the role, learn the systems, because he is a guy who can get you 20 goals in a season. Probably not this season, but he does have some skill. And so if you can finally get him to buy into one specific role, which is what they've done with the rest of the bottom six, then who knows? He could be a pretty productive player. At this point, he's not going to be anything more than what he's been the last couple of years, and so you shouldn't expect him to have that great season he had early in his career. I think he had 31 goals or something. He's never going to be like that, but just another guy to keep as depth, and possibly come in and give you a little bit extra skill in the bottom six. So I don't mind the acquisition. We didn't give up too much.
No, I think on one hand, it was just drop two contracts that we're not using. And so you have one less contract if you want some trade space. There was some interesting analysis I was hearing talking about, saying like this is a top six guy in terms of skill who can't commit defensively at that level. So it, on one hand, it's kind of nice insurance for like a Nylander injury or a Marner injury. Say if one of those guys go out, then you have like a more goal scoring option to slot into that top six, where I think he just his strengths fit better than they do in the bottom six, because I don't see him playing filling in like a check-in defensive role very satisfactorily, where I do think he could have some goal scoring potential. But as is, I would take Willie Nylander over Alex Galchenyuk every day of the week. So the way injuries have been going, you never know, and nice to have insurance replacement option. That fourth line especially, they're still shuffling around, so I'm sure he'll eventually get a look. And yeah, probably one of his last chances after going number 3 in the NHL draft, which is a bit of a sad story, but it's the way she goes.
I don't think he'll get in the lineup on Saturday, but that would have been fun because he has played for the Canadians in the past. A little bit of a revenge tour against Montreal and Ottawa, maybe in store later on in the season. But
Yeah, well, it's crazy how he kind of, I mean, he got traded for Max Domi, I think, in that like 1-for-1, and it didn't. That's when the like his stats with Montreal were pretty fine. I don't like he was averaging like 40-50 point seasons, and then as soon as he steps into Arizona, that's when the decline starts. So I don't know if that was just such a confidence shaker for him, or quite what, just wasn't able to buy into the Arizona system. And
yeah, again, I think similar to a Nylander, at a point in your career, you settle on what you are as a player. And he, I guess, was performing a little bit above his pay grade in Montreal, and has now settled into this type of player that he is, and needs to, and has been a guy who's been accustomed to being a top player, but now he needs to find and buy into a new role, and hopefully that's what he can do. And looking forward to seeing what he gives. Again, a guy that the Leafs don't have to commit to. So if he is underperforming, you just put him back on the taxi squad and hopefully bury his contract. I don't know. Many teams would pick him up on waivers. I'm sure he probably would be, but yeah, just another uh, bargain bin pickup to add to the list of guys, and maybe he'll give you pop at some point in the season. No downside, really.
no, yeah, I
We
was
await.
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're gonna wrap this segment. We've
Yeah,
we've
I
we've
think
beaten the dead horse on the Leafs, and I'm sure anyone who's a hockey fan is probably tired of listening to us blather on about them, but we must, because they mean so much to us, and we have so much emotional investment that it can't not be discussed. So We'll end our hockey segment and take a quick break and come back for plenty of other sports on deck.